Kennedy.
Hi. I'm just kind of listening. I don't know. I'm very fascinated right now. Yeah, I'm very shy, so.
Sorry, I'm being like the professor I am, right? Like just trying to pick on the class. But does anything sort of jump into your mind?
Well, I was just thinking when we were talking about like changing people's minds, I guess, like people who don't think small things can make a difference. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday. We were talking about like wearing orange shirts and stuff like that. And he told me, he was like, that's going to do nothing. Like, go do your thing, but that's not going to do anything. And I was just like, okay, you don't have to, but I think it's just the recognition and the support and people like small things as well.
You know what, Kennedy, I think, for me, it's always a question of sort of thinking of your resources as an individual and what you can do in the world. And wearing an orange shirt, I think, is a wonderful thing. It doesn't mean you're not also doing other things. It's a really easy gesture and potentially a very powerful one. Like I see people walking down the street. Actually, for some reason, I don't know what world I'm living in, but because I stay off of social media and stuff, but I wasn't aware. We were sitting on the porch and I kept seeing people walk by in orange shirts. And I said to Rebecca, like, this seems awfully coincidental that everybody's wearing these bright orange shirts. And she's like, no, didn't you know? Like, it's, and explained it to me. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, let's get some orange shirts. And so, when we go for a bike ride or whatever, we put on our orange shirts. And like, that's so easy to do. So do it, right? I think what I would say in terms of small acts is that we need to understand when the acts are small, and that they shouldn't preclude us from doing other things. But when they're so easy and so potentially significant, like going to a protest rally is not that big a deal, right? Afterward, you can go have brunch. I mean, make it part of your day. Wearing an orange shirt or whatever. Like, we should just be doing these things in the way that we do other small things in our life, like deciding to make a gourmet dinner or becoming a better guitar player and practicing for an hour. Like build citizenship exercises into our life. We have all these other ones, call a friend, do a Zoom call, check in on dad, play the guitar, make breakfast. We do all these things. But why don't we start thinking that every day should have several pieces that relate to citizenship? Not just to family, not just to friendship, not just to work, not just to hobbies, not just to whatever, but to citizenship. And then you could check off your citizenship moment of the day because you put on your orange shirt. And maybe you want to do a few other things on that day. So I think that is a really important way to think about it. How do we activate ourselves in a very material and consistent and substantial way as citizens? How do we see that as part of our everyday existence? But I want to say one more thing, and I talk about this a lot in the book, and it's in the film as well. And that is, at the same time, we have to be really skeptical of small things that are presented as the only things or as big things. And the example I have in mind is the notion that is pumped out by the corporatocracy that as consumers, we have a lot of power. That I'm not saying we shouldn't drive electric cars, but there's a kind of ideological formation that says our only power politically is in the marketplace. So that we drive electric cars, we take out our recycling, we make sure we buy organic, we buy from companies that have, lesser footprints or that are concerned about climate. We do Pink Ribbon Day. We follow the corporate agenda of social change, which and we consider that that's the only agenda. That's presented as the only useful and powerful thing that we can do, is to exercise our consumer power. That we have to be really wary of, because it is an ideological move to convince us that we shouldn't exercise our citizen power, that it's enough to simply, support good corporations, be responsible consumers, take out our recycling, make sure we turn the light switch off, all of that. I mean, it's like when you fill up your car, if you still drive a gas car, at least this is true 6 months ago, at Petrocan, there's a little sticker saying, use fuel responsibly. Like, that's going to solve the problem. Like, we're going to pump it out of the ground. We're going to sell it. We're going to lobby governments not to regulate it. But you, consumer, make sure you use it responsibly. To me, that kind of just typifies the whole thing. And so it's put on us as consumers. And the idea of us being citizens, the idea of corporations being the problem, all those ideas are kind of occluded by that ideological formation of the good consumer. So that would be where I would say, it's not that you shouldn't take out your recycling, but don't buy into the whole ideological fabric that's woven around that idea.
Yeah,
and that's something I deal with a lot in the book. And there's a woman, she's fantastic, named Stacy Mitchell in the film. She's in the book as well, but she talks about this really nicely in the film.
I just wanted to mention, Kennedy and Joe, how you guys were talking about like the wearing an orange shirt as a sense of kind of unity and a small step. And if you think about it, like if 200, 300, 400, 500 people take that small step, it shows the unity. Absolutely. I have a couple friends who have family members in Palestine, and they're talking about, because of the postage on social media, that is the only reason they have help. That is the only reason people are sending things. So yeah, there are people out there that are just doing it as a sense of performative activism, but even that is helping them. Absolutely. Because it's gotten out there, and now it's it's being generated, and the world knows about it. Same with the farmers' protest, right? Like there was a protest in almost every country, and it spread.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And you also have to think about your particular position and what you can say. For example, I'm Jewish, but I'm pro-Palestinian. I believe in Palestinian rights. And so hundreds of Jewish scholars across the country have come out, and we took out a big full-page ad in the Globe and Mail and said, being pro-Palestinian is not anti-Semitic. It is not anti-Semitic to be anti-Israel. It is not anti-Semitic to be anti-current regime in Israel. And so as a Jewish person, I'm in a unique position to make that point, to say that, to basically advocate for Palestinian rights, criticize the Israeli state, and to say, and Noam Chomsky is the same. He's a Jewish person who's very pro-Palestinian. He's part of our group. And so you have to think about how you're positioned, what your privilege is, and as well as your not privilege, and how that plays in to how you should and can act. So, I have some visibility as a law professor and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to wear an orange shirt. I'm going to take a stand as a Jewish person for pro-Palestine, and so that becomes, I think that becomes part of the equation. What can you do not only in terms of your particular talents and passions and whatever, but what can you do in terms of your kind of social position within the current system of social relations?
Sense of allyship as well, right? As settlers, wearing an orange shirt shows that, hey, we acknowledge that we're settlers. Exactly. And we acknowledge what's happening.
Exactly. Because we collectively are, and we're complicit in it, and so, it's very important to have those recognitions.
I was also going to add, whatever you commit your life to, your life's work, and I don't necessarily mean that in a capitalist sense, I mean, what you want to do with your life, like what we're doing right now is something that I'm doing with my life. And it's part of, that's what I see as a career in a way. And I think it's often the case with actors, is that it's a bunch of different things that you do. It's a compilation of your life's work, whatever that is to make choices that that don't buy into this system, that choose to go against it. Like, I have this overriding temptation at the moment. I'm getting ads for it all the time to whiten my teeth and to straighten them because they're a bit crowded. And my manager has said, "Oh, you should probably whiten." And I'm not going to. And it's just that because people this is something that happened when they came through as a 5-year-old. They're just this color. It's the amount of enamel I have. It's who I am. And so I'm not going to. And even I have this burning desire to do it, but you have to sort of fight it. I think there are key moments where there's going to be internal struggles. Or another one is when I first went to drama school, I was told that my casting age went up to 35 by a director from the West End. He said, you could play anywhere between 18 to 35. And at the time I was 21. And I said, absolutely not. I'm not putting 35 down as my casting age, because you as a 40-year-old man might think that I could play 35, but I know 35-year-old women and they don't look like me and they don't have the experience. It's those little, and even though I might be more likely to get that 35-year-old's role because I look a certain way at 21, I have to fight against it.
Yeah. Personally.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could do a whole podcast on that, and I can tell you that conversation that you were just having is our lunch, breakfast, dinner conversation. I mean, my partner being a woman actor in a cruel business, and who isn't 21 or 35. It's a business that is really awful and misogynistic and harsh on women over the age of 40, even 35. I mean, it's just it's appalling what goes on in the industry. And teeth whitening, she has not gotten her teeth whitened for similar reasons, and there are all kinds of other pressures, believe me, as you get older, in terms of surgery and just it's crazy. And I mean, it's already happening. We talk about it a lot. Yeah.
Most of my friends, well, a lot of the people I went to drama school have already had lip injections and fillers.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're average age of 24.
No, it's crazy. It's really crazy. Yeah.
Yes,
well, but your larger point is absolutely right. I mean, that wherever you are and whatever you're doing, there are these stances that you can take, and if everybody actually takes them, it will bring about change. I mean, if every actor said, forget it, I'm not going to get my teeth whitened because that's ridiculous, and then the standard would have to change. But the other side of it is very hard to get that kind of collective action among people who are competing among each other. And that conundrum is the conundrum of politics for the last 3,000 years. The collective action problem versus the sort of, I'm going to, maneuver so I can take advantage as an individual. I mean, that is the fundamental contradiction, of politics. And it's a tough one.
Do you think it goes all the way back to, like, all of this makes me think of the cultural idea of the individual, and the way that we can feel better and feel less alienated is by, whitening our teeth or buying new clothes, so it's all stuff directed at the self, right? So this like rise of the individual, and corporations much like that. And so instead of finding meaning through service to others, like religions teach us, right? Instead, we're taught to consume till we feel better. And so we never do. And and then the cycle continues. So it's this, again, this idea that people are stuck in this system that is so fucked up, and the system itself makes it impossible to act out, like you say too. They'll really, like Twitter even, right? So this is an amazing documentary that everyone should see, and then it's being prevented. So this idea that corporations have more power than governments, and like you say, why we need to. So would you say people on this podcast, should we all get into government? Is that what we should do?
We should all get into activating ourselves as citizens, and I think there are obviously different ways to do that, but getting into government is necessary but not sufficient. We also have to get into government with a vision of government as different than what we've had, and I do think some people are doing that. But we also need people to be activists in civil society, and we need people to, like Anna's talking about, just in their day-to-day jobs, take stances, do things, be principled, be human. And like Naaz is talking about, we need people to wear orange shirts and to do, we need to be citizens and do what is kind of within where we're positioned, within what our passions are, within who we are. And the idea of the individual, yes, I mean, this is something that can take us deep into the sort of rabbit holes of philosophy, but suffice it to say that, with the rise of capitalism, the sort of ideological parallel to that was the liberal notion of the individual, John Stuart Mill, and all of these kind of 18th and 19th century philosophers talking about this emergence of a new thing, because the individual was a new thing, because in the feudal system, people weren't individuals. They occupied particular roles in communal structures. Now, those communal structures were not happy or ones to be celebrated. They were lords and serfs. They were deeply hierarchical, but they were all about serving the greater good, which ultimately led up to God. So the Lord was connected to the monarchy was connected to God. You were a serf working for the Lord, so you were connected to God through the Lord. And so it was this kind of, but nobody was like, I want to find out what my purpose and meaning in life is. Like, nobody was saying that in the 16th century, right? Or the 15th or 14th or 13th or 12th. It was God, it was the monarch, it was the greater good, it was noblesse oblige, it was all of those things. The individual, I mean, it's hard for us to imagine today, but the individual didn't exist. People existed, but it was all about their duties, their responsibilities to the community, and indigenous cultures, to Earth, to the collective. I mean, it's, in all these different cosmologies that are not liberal capitalism, the community, the whole, the collective, the Earth, Pachamama, in a lot of indigenous cultures, Mother Earth, Father, Son, it's like there are all of these ideas about stewardship, about responsibility, about commitment, about collective. And sometimes they're really messed up, like in feudalism, but they're very different than what we've got. So what we had, as Bryn was pointing out, we have this situation where the individual emerges in like 17th, 18th century, and then everything else starts to fall away. And the individual is necessary for capitalism because you need a consumer, especially as capitalism gets more and more consumer oriented rather than just needing to build houses and sort of things that people need. Now, capital has to be found, has to be extracted out of, selling stuff that people don't really need, whether it's cigarettes or makeup or toys or, that we have to we have to keep creating new markets so that we can keep extracting capital from labor and turning that into profit and the earth. And so we need to just keep expanding. And so now corporations have to find new things to sell people, the guitars and basses and books. And I mean, it's not that these are bad things, but then the system just kind of goes out of control. And we as individuals start to see ourselves as just these roles that we've been given, which is just consuming pods. We have to just keep consuming or the economy will fail. And so we're told that we're not good enough, that now our consumption has to be to make ourselves more perfect, more better. Because humans have always tried to do that, tried to be closer to God, tried to be better to others. So now we have to be more perfect in a consumer sense. So now we have to get nice glass frames. Now we have to get nice clothes. Now we have to change our face. Now we have to stop looking old. Now we have to get rid of those wrinkles. Now we have to dye our hair. Now we have, endless, because all of that makes money. And the system is based on generating capital, and it falls apart if it doesn't. So we just have to keep going further and further down that road. No actors were whitening their teeth in the 1940s. They made some pretty good films, right? You look at a lot of great European independent films and Canadian independent films, for that matter, and the actors aren't all sort of surgically, reformed and everything, especially European art house films, and the acting is like off the charts good. It's like, and the films are amazing, and it's just like you just can't get enough of it. And but capitalism, and Marx talked about overproduction. What overproduction means is that you just have to keep producing, because the system is ultimately based on extracting work and extracting resources from workers and from the earth, turning it into something that you can then sell for profit. I mean, that's what capitalism is. And so you have to keep finding more and more and more things to do that with. And so it creates its own logic of the sense where we have to achieve some bizarre sense of perfection, meaning as us weird human beings, that will live forever, meaning we'll never die. And so our teeth, I mean, yes, you were born with them, but as was I. But the idea is that as our teeth yellow or get gray, it means we're deteriorating. As we get wrinkles, we're deteriorating. As our hair turns gray, we're deteriorating. And so perfection means not deteriorating. Right. That everybody has to look like they're 21 or 19 or whatever. And a lot of money is made by serving that conception.